right, so we had some breaking news on Friday, and like that news dump period on late on Friday. I don't think that they were trying to dump the news. It just happened to work out that way. New York-based track veterinarian Dr. Michael Galvin was suspended for 2 years after an internal adjudication panel for HISA determined he'd failed to submit thousands of veterinary treatment records in 2023 and 2024. He also was fined $25,000. Violated HISA's rule when he's failed to submit more than 3,000 veterinary treatment records within 24 hours of examination or treatment for covered horses. John, you've been following this story a little more closely than I have. Tell me your thoughts.
Well, I think there's a couple things at hand here, Joe. Number one is that if it was kind of a one-off, and you'd say, hey, the guy didn't follow through on a couple of procedures, then maybe a hearing and a slap on the wrist would be appropriate. But number one, he's got history of issues, and has been before the respective boards in the past. And number two, it wasn't like it was a couple of things he didn't file. It was more than 3,000 veterinary treatment records that were not filed correctly or timely. And at some point you got to say, the guy may be a bad bookkeeper, maybe a bad, administrator, and doesn't have staff, all those things. Okay. But at some point you have to say, is he doing it purposefully, or is he doing it maliciously, or is he doing it to try to hide something, or is it just that he's just really bad? But you know what? The bottom line is that when you get into the thousands of issues, that HISA has no choice but to come in and put in a 2-year suspension and a $25,000 fine, against Dr. Galvin. Joe, previously there were, in talking about this off air, we both looked up some of these articles from years past, and unfortunately, Dr. Galvin has a history of run-ins, with regulatory boards. And, so much so that it was even pre-HISA. There were some questions as to, when he was doing certain procedures and treatments and medications and things like that. So I think it goes beyond. I saw on Twitter people were saying, oh, he's just bad at communicating. He's just bad at, he's a one-man band. He's just trying to do everything. At some point in time, you just have to say, you know what, this quacks like a duck and looks like a duck and swims like a duck. It must be a duck. And if you want to look at Ray Pollock in the Pollock Report did a great article, not only recently, but also going back to the 2021 issues that Dr. Galvin had with the industry, and just look at some of the names of the clients that he had and do your own homework as to, looking at win percentage and in the money percentage pre and post when Dr. Galvin was working. And I think you can kind of connect some of the dots as well, but I'll let you guys be your own sleuths and own Sherlock Holmes on those. But yeah, Joe, it's not a good situation. I think it's exactly why HISA, was implemented to come in and make sure that the veterinarians, who are the gatekeepers for these medications and these procedures, that they fall in line as well. And we always talk about the trainers, who's a good egg, who's a bad apple, and everything in between. But, the veterinarians are really the ones that are administering these drugs and these procedures.
Yeah, John, it's a great point that you make about the veterinarian, because we saw that, back with Christian Ryan and with Seth Fishman and some of the people that were involved in the Service and Navarro indictments that, ideally in a perfect world, the veterinarian is supposed to be the last line of defense for the horse, like the final advocate for a horse when a trainer is trying to do something nefarious and is trying to take an edge. The veterinarian is supposed to be the one that stands up for the horse and says, whoa, this is not safe for them. This is not good for them. But a lot of times, they're willing co-conspirators in these issues, if not like the pusher themselves. And I'm not talking about this specific instance and specific story in general. I'm talking more in general that, veterinarians, I'm glad that we're not just throwing the hammer down on trainers, because vets are a major, major part of the puzzle when people are trying to take an edge. And we did see a major trainer suspension this week as well, with Phil Serpe getting suspended 2 years for a clenbuterol positive. They did not did not levy a fine on him, which the defense lawyer says is like kind of an attempt to get around like a constitutionality argument. I'm not smart enough to know where to land on that, but I don't know, John. I wonder what other trainers think, because Phil Serpe's not a guy that I think of as a juicer. Just looking at his results, I don't know him that well. I did a story on him, I think, once at the TDN, but I don't know him like that well to say yes or no one way or the other. But just looking at his results as a handicapper, I didn't think of him as a cheater. But a lot of people have made clenbuterol like the target, the target to get rid of in this business. Mm-hmm. Mark Cassie's talked a lot about it, how that's kind of like a catch-all performance enhancer that doesn't need to be in the system of 99% of horses. So I'm curious what they think, whether, because I think a lot of times when HISA has put these rulings down, there's been a lot of reflexive defense of the trainers. And I get that. I totally understand that. It's a fraternity. And if you think a guy's getting railroaded, you naturally want to stand up for them because it could be you next. Right. But in this case where it's clenbuterol and something that so many people have identified as a major, major problem and a performance enhancer that a lot of guys have been using to bend the rules, I'm curious what they think about whether or not this was a just suspension.